Hello there, Sally here. I was working on something today. This is an envelope for my sister-in-law, and I started doing something that I thought might be fun to share as far as a way to play with letters. I'm going to zoom in, hopefully it'll focus. What I've done here after I created these letters is I put on a little shadow. I'm not quite done yet, so some of the letters aren't done, but I put on this little drop shadow, and I thought I'd demonstrate how to do that. So some of you may not have calligraphy tools. I'm going to do two different ways here. One using colored pencils that you might have on hand, or just regular pencils or markers. And the other way I'm going to use some ink like I did on that envelope. So first thing you need is a colored pencil or regular pencil. And if you don't know how to do calligraphy, I'm going to use some kind of chunky letters because I think that'll help demonstrate it a little bit better. But if you don't know how to make those with a calligraphy tool, you can make some with a pencil. And some of you may have done this before, making either graffiti letters, they might be called, or bubble letters. And if you haven't, I'll show you how. If you first draw very lightly, and I'm using the word hug, some capital letters, just very lightly, and separate them a little bit. I know graffiti letters will sometimes touch and overlap, and that's kind of a cool look. But for today, we might not want to do that, so we have room to do our shadow. And I'm just writing the word hug in my capital letters. So you use your capital letters and very lightly write the word hug. And then in order to make them bubble letters, you take your pencil and you just outline them really wide and bubbly. Great word. Like this. And then you have bubble letters. Like I said, a lot of times these will touch and overlap, and that's one thing that makes them sort of fun. But for today, I wanted them separate. So if they do bump into each other when you outline, that's okay. That gives it that more of a kind of graffiti look anyway. So there's your word hug. And then you can just color it in. So if you have a regular pencil, you can color it in, or maybe you did it in marker. You can color that in with the marker, and see you're covering up that little pencil line. Or if you used a regular pencil, you could always erase that line first. And I'm just using, I think it's a piece of scrap paper. It might be watercolor paper, but you can do this on really any kind of paper. I have a lot of scrap just lying around, and a lot of times I don't even know what it is. So you can do the same thing. You can just grab a piece of paper, and if you don't even know what it is, and give it a try. All right, so there's our bubble letters. So I'm sure you can do that if you haven't done that before. And I realize I'm really way off camera there, so hopefully I'll stay on there for the next thing. So one way to do a shadow is to take a pencil or a marker. You can use a really light marker. This is a Tombow brush marker if you have those, or a Crayola marker. Pick a really light color, or if you just want to use a pencil, you can do that as well. But find something light. Now this one could be a little bit lighter, but if you have Crayola markers, maybe even a light blue or something would work as well. So one way to do a shadow is to just outline parts of your letters, and that will indicate which way it looks like the sun or the light is coming. So I've always been taught to put your shadow on the right of the letter and underneath the letter. So the light looks like it's coming in from this direction. You can do to the left and underneath, to the left and top. If you've done any digital kind of stuff, like in Photoshop or something like that, you can choose which way you want your your light source to be, and you'll have those shadows created for you. So it's up to you, but you have to choose in order to get the effect. If you outline them completely on all sides, it might look fun and interesting, but it wouldn't be a shadow. So I'm going to pick to the right of my letter and below. And all I'm going to do is take my marker, and I'm touching my letter at this point, and I'm going to mark to the right. Let's mark to the right of that part of the letter. Now that's a little curve there, so I may want to make sure my shadow is a little curved too. I'm going to mark to the right. I'm going to mark to the right. Now I got a curve coming, so I'm going to stop there, and we might have some decisions to make about the curve. To the right. I'm going to stop because the right is stopping. To the right. To the right. To the right. Oh, and in here. A little bit underneath there, but to the right. Okay. So now I look and say, okay, that's looking pretty good, but I also said I wanted mine underneath. You could stop there. I mean, that looks like the light is coming from this direction, giving it a nice shadow, but I'm going to go a little bit further, and I'm going to do underneath, to the right and underneath. Remember I said that? And I'm touching. And here, I don't want to go too far. I think I'll go a little bit further because we've got that curve there. This is definitely an underneath, but I've got a mark up here, so I want to kind of stop it there. Here's a little underneath on that crossbar of that G, and I might bring this a little bit further, like that. Okay, like I said, that could be a little bit lighter, but there you go. There's a simple way to do a drop shadow. I just took a lighter color and I marked my to the rights, and then I marked my underneaths. So it looks like the light is coming in from this direction. Well, there's another way we can do this, and I'm going to be using a calligraphy tool. This is a cartridge pen. It's got ink in a little cartridge. It's called a Pilot Parallel pen. They're kind of nice to have. They can be initially maybe a little pricey, but they last a long time and they're really useful. So they might be a really good investment. So I'm trying to stay on camera here. All right, so I'm going to write the word hug again. And I do have ink in here, but I'm also dipping it. That's a nice thing about these pens, is you can do either. And then if you do have color in here, then the colors will mix as you write. So that's a nice option to have. So I'm just going to write, ooh, this paper is really heavy grain here, so we'll see what happens. I'm using walnut ink, and it is mixing with the ink in the pen, but it's pretty strong. So yeah, this paper might not have been the best choice. It's, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got what we call a real heavy sort of grain, or not grain, like tooth on it. Kind of a watercolor surface on it. These are just capital letters I like to make sort of Neuland-ish, but they're just kind of basic capital letters, and I'm just making them a little nicer there. Okay, so there's my word hug. Now this is wet, so I got to be careful, but what's great about this type of shadow I'm going to do, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to touch it like I did up here. I'm going to leave a little gap. So let's see how we did that. Just like if I show you this guy again, where's my camera? You can see how there's like that little gap there. Okay, so first thing we want to do then is take our pencil. Oh, and I'm using a softer pencil. It's this one happens to be a 2B. The B pencils are softer. The H pencils are harder. A regular number 2 pencil, those yellow pencils, would work, but I just find you can blend these a little bit better the softer the ink. I'm sorry, the softer the pencil. So, so that's what I'm using, but you can certainly use a regular pencil. So let's do what we did up here, only we're going to leave a gap. I'm going to draw a line to the right of my letter. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit more without, there we go. And then I'm going to jump down here and I'm going to go to the right. Now I'm not touching here where it comes up against the letter. You can experiment and see if you like that look. I'm not touching mainly because my letters are still wet. But that might work as well too if you actually touched right there. But I'm going to go to the right and to the right, and I'm leaving that little gap. I learned just recently, and I wobbled there a little bit, but that's okay because, you know, my stroke kind of wobbled, so I'm following the edge of the stroke. But I recently learned what that's called. I watched a Julie Wildman video that she did recently, and it's called a moat, and I never knew that. So that little gap, you're leaving a little moat. I'm going to the right again with my pencil line, leaving the moat. Now I've got a curve, so I think I'm going to stop right about there. I may fill in a little more. It depends on what's happening down here. On the curves, you always have to make some decisions because you don't want lines on both sides of the letter to lose the effect. So at some point you have to make a decision. But here's to the right. And maybe I'll do my underneath. Maybe I'll go about there, and then maybe I'll bring that one over just a little bit. So you can see now we've made that decision of how to deal with that. This little top stroke here, I'm going to consider that to the right. I'm going to put a little line there, and then this is to the right, to the right, to the right. I know this is on top, but I'm going to stop it right about there. Here's to the right. And now I'm going to think about my underneaths. That's underneath. I'm going to give that a little bit of an underneath. Okay, so I'm not going completely over here because I've got a line up here. So again, on a curve, those are decisions you have to make. And back here, let's get my underneath, and my underneath. All right, so you could leave it at that, and that is a nice effect. But to go even further, I am going to do a little shading. I'm going to still use my pencil, and I'm going to use one of these little blenders. You could use a Q-tip, you could use the tip of your finger, but I find sometimes that's too fat for me. So this little point on these is nice to use. So I'm going to take my pencil, and I'm going to do I'm just doing little circular motions very lightly next to that pencil line I did. And I'm going to move down here. And I'm just making that shadow a little bit bigger. And I'm going to finish the H, and then I'm going to show you what's next. So I'm just little circular motions very lightly. I can always make it darker if I want. And if you blend it, it makes it look more natural. You get rid of some of those little pencil marks. And I think it makes it look a little bit more realistic. My pencil's in the way, sorry. Now, if you find, like here, I kind of bumped up above a little bit that I didn't really want to do. Let me finish here. You can do a couple things. One, maybe I'll bring my little line just right around the corner. That might make it look a little more realistic. But once you get it blended, if you think, oh, it's too dark, or I went too far out or something, you can always grab an eraser. Now I happen to have this eraser stick. It just is a smaller eraser here, so I can fit in tight places. You can always go back and erase or sort of blend a little bit too with your eraser. Now I have to be careful. I think they're dry, but when you go to brush those little bits away, you got to be careful. Make sure your letters are dry. It's a little dark still, so I may blend a little bit more. But I'm going to finish the letters and see. Maybe it's maybe I like it like that. So see, I'm just doing very light circular motions right along my pencil line. And then I'm going to come up here. Maybe go around that corner just a little bit to give it that little 3D effect up there. And this one a little bit. Notice I'm not doing a huge shadow that way, because if the light's coming this way, there isn't going to be a giant shadow right here. You kind of imagine, you know, maybe look at something, maybe put something in front of you. Now, of course, I got light coming from all different directions, but if I put something in front and I see the light coming and I can see where the shadow is, see how it's bigger in the middle and very narrow, you know, down here. So you might want to use that as an example of where your shadow is going to be, or how big your shadow is going to be. And then, see, so here I'll keep it kind of narrow, but then it's going to get a little bit bigger over here. Maybe I'll make that a little bit bigger in there, and then it stayed narrow there. And see, maybe these are a little too wide. I'm not quite sure. Maybe this does need to get a little. So you just have to play and see how realistic it looks. Where's my blender? And your blender does get dirty. You can wipe it off or really smudge it out on some more paper, get all the extra pencil that's on there. Sometimes you can grab your blender and it's got enough on it, just you don't even need to put the extra pencil on. Just use the end of your dirty blender. Okay, that's a little dark. I think I'm going to blend and erase a little bit more, maybe. But I think for the video, maybe that's good that it's a little dark so it shows up a little bit better. I'm just going over with the eraser. Again, getting rid of some of those pencil lines, and I'm going to risk it. I'm going to go like this. Let's see, I think they're all dry. Oh, a little bit of a smudge, but there we go. So I hope that was useful. Nice way to add some dimension to your lettering. Again, if you don't have the calligraphy tools yet to do something with like this with the broad edge pen, you can certainly draw your letters and make some drop shadows this way. Just make sure to pick your direction. Either left and above, or right and below, or just right or just left, whatever it is. Just pick one direction and go with it.